This Chazar Zech Nishbach has to Shag Yehudim Sech Chullin Daf Pei Aleph. Rav Hamnuna said, Rav Shimon would say that the Yisrael Oisei B'nai does not apply to Kodshim. The reason is that Rav Shimon holds that a shechita is not effective in making the animal mutter to be eaten is not given the status of a shechita. The shechita of a carbon doesn't permit the animal to be eaten because the zrika still has to be done, and therefore it does not get the status of a shechita. Rava asks, the Brisa says if an animal and its offspring are both Kodshim and are shechted outside the Azor, Rav Shimon says the second shechet is over a lois aseh for shechting Kodshim outside the Azor because Rav Shimon holds that something that would become kosher to be brought with the passage of time, and someone brings it before the time passes, he'd be over a lois aseh, but it would not be chayiv kares. Chachamim say that whenever there's no kares, there's also no violation of a lois aseh. We asked on that Brisa, since Rav Shimon holds that the shechita does not have the status of a shechita, the second animal could even have been brought inside the Azara. There's no issue of oisus b'nai because the first animal is not called shechted according to him, and if so, when it's offered outside, the shechet should even be chayiv kares. Rava answered that the Brisa is missing words and should be understood as follows: when both animals are kodshim and they're both shechted outside the Azara, the Rabbanan hold that the first shechet gets kares. The second animal is possible to be offered that day because of oisus b'nai, and therefore its shechet is part from the lav of shechting kodshim outside the Azara. Rav Shimon holds both sheikhim get karetz since there's no issue of oisiyas b'nai. The second animal is fit to be offered in the Azara. And if the first animal is shechted outside the Azara and the second is shechted inside the Azara, the Rabbanan hold the first sheikh is chayiv karetz and the second animal is possible since it's not fit to be offered that day and its sheikh is potter. Rav Shimon holds the second animal is the kosher carbon. If the first animal is shechted inside the Azara and the second animal is shechted outside, the Rabbanan hold the first animal is a kosher carbon and its sheikh is potter, and the second animal is possible and its sheikh is potter. Rav Shimon holds that the second shechet is over on a lois aseh. Now, if it's true that Rav Shimon holds that oisus b'nai does not apply to kodshim, in this last case, the shechet should get kares as well. The shechita of the first animal is not a shechita for purposes of oisus b'nai, and the second animal is therefore fit to be offered as a carbon inside the Azara in that day. And rather, Rava said, this is what Rav Hamnuna meant to say. According to Rav Shimon, one does not get malchus for violating oisus b'nai with animals of kodshim. The reason is that the meat does not become mutter at the time of the shechita, rather becomes mutter after the zrika of the blood. Therefore, any warning that's given at the time of the shechita is considered to be a asra suffix, because it's unsure whether the zrika will ultimately be done, and a warning given in suffix does not have the status of a valid warning. The Gemara says that Rava follows his reasoning of elsewhere, where he says that if an animal is chulin and its offspring is a shlomim, and both were shechted on the same day, the halacha is as follows: if the chulin animal was shechted first and then the shlom was shechted, the sheikh will be potter from malchus according to Rav Shimon, because the warning would be a warning of suffix. However, if the shlom was shechted first and the zrika was done, and then the chulin was shechted, the sheikh would be chayav malchus, even according to Rav Shimon. The Gemara says, Rav also said if an animal of chulin and its offspring, if an animal is chulin and its offspring is an oila and they're shechted on the same day, then certainly if the chulin was shechted first and then the oila, he'd be potter. Even more, if the oila shechted first and its zrika was done and the chulin was then shechted, he'd be potter from malchus according to Rav Shimon, because the shechita of an oila does not permit the animal to be eaten. Rabbi Yaakov there, Rabbi Yechanan said that Rav Shimon would hold that he's chayiv malchus in the second case because we darshan a pasuk to teach that the eating of the mizbech is considered to be an eating, and therefore the shechita did make the meat mutter to be eaten, so to say. Zok the next Mishnah: if one shechted an animal was found to be a treifa, or if one shechted an animal for avodah zarah, or if one shechted the parah aduma, or a shara niskel, an ox that had been sentenced to be stoned, or an egla rufa, and then shechts any of these animals' parent or offspring on the same day, or if Shimon says he's potter from malchus, Chacham says chayiv. Mishnah continues: if one shechted an animal and it became nevela, or if one killed the animal by other means, and then shechts the animal's parent or offspring, he's potter from the lav of oisai v'yas b'nai. Zok the Gemara Rish Lakish said, the Chacham only say their view regarding an animal shechted for avodah zarah when the first animal was shechted for avodah zarah and the second was shechted for eating. However, if the first animal was shechted for eating and the second was shechted for avodah zarah, he'll be potter from malchus based on the principle of kamalei b'derab minei. When someone becomes chayiv to get two punishments from one act, he only gets the more severe punishment. Rabbi Yechanan said this is something that even children know. Rather say that the Chacham hold that there are even times when the first animal is shechted for eating and the second is shechted for avodah zarah that the sheikh will get malchus. The case would be where he was only warned regarding oisus and was not warned regarding avodah zarah. Rish Lakish disagrees because he holds that since had he been warned regarding avodah zarah, he'd be potter from malchus for oisai b'nai. Even when he's not warned for avodah zarah, he still becomes potter for malchus for oisai b'nai. Marcel Rabbi Yechanan and Rish Lakish follow their views from elsewhere. Why? When Rav Dimi came from Bavel, he said that if one did an act b'shoigig for which he would have been chayiv misa had he done it b'mezid, or if one did an act b'shoigig for which he would have been chayiv malchus if he did it b'mezid, and he simultaneously becomes chayiv in a lesser penalty, Rabbi Yechanan says he's chayiv in a lesser punishment because he was not warned regarding the more severe punishment and therefore doesn't get the more severe punishment. Rish Lakish says he's potter from the lesser punishment because since he would have been punished with the severe punishment had he been warned, he's potter from the lesser punishment even when he wasn't warned for the more severe one. Mar says both machlekes are needed. Why? If we only had the one regarding our Mishnah, we would say that Rish Lakish says he's potter in that case because there are two forms of corporal punishment. But in the other case, where the lesser punishment is only monetary, maybe we would agree with Rabbi Yochanan on that he remains chayiv. If we only had the other case, we would say it's only over there. Rabbi Yochanan says he's chayiv. But in the case of the Mishnah, maybe he agrees with Rish Lakish. That's why both cases of machlekes are necessary. Furthermore, is the shechita of the parah aduma considered to be a shechita that's not fit, according to Rav Shimon? Rav Shimon says that the meat of a parah aduma is subject to food tumas since it had a period of when it was fit to be eaten. Rish Lakish explains that Rav Shimon holds that the parah aduma can be redeemed even after it was shechted. Now, if Rav Shimon holds that it can be eaten, he should also hold that the shechita is considered to be a shechita. And for the Gemara, Rav Shimon bar Abba in the name of Rabbi Yochanan said the inclusion of the parah aduma in the list in our Mishnah is actually a mistake.